Radio sHAZZBOT, Issue 02,
January 2024,
BETA MAXIMUM OVERDRAFT,
Episode 0207.
Office Gossips, Humors and Innuendos, and Letters to the Editors by J. Drewster Poindexter.
The opinions expressed in these pages do not necessarily represent the views and opinions of the writers and managers of Invisible Ink publications, and they are intended primarily for satirical purposes anyway. Plus the fact that, like them also, anyway, any resemblance to any public or private figure is purely coincidental. Reader discretion is advised.
Epilogue.
There was a time in the US when the government had everyone take polio vaccines, and it cured a childhood epidemic that was killing tens of thousands of kids a year. The only thing we learn from history is that some people never learn anything from history. Okay, now on to the funny stuffs.
It's convenient that many poems are very short. That way you don't have to read them for very long. It leaves you more time to think about them too.
In a recent study, 1 in 4 people is said to be currently experiencing feelings of loneliness, and more often than not that fourth person is the drummer, but he or she does kind of have to sit in the back all the time, and so he or she only hears half of everything, and so he or she thinks all the songs are called niet. But like a substitute high school teacher, I guess he or she knows the risks when he or she agrees to take the job. Niet. I'm sorry, did you just say something?
Are there any more at home like you? Or like maybe on a shelf in the back of the store or something?
Remember these numbers: 1 in 100 Americans, 1 in 100 Americans has ever seen any military service. 1 in 100 Americans is currently in state or federal prison for more than a 1-year sentence. And 1 in 10,000 Americans is actively enrolled in a professional martial arts program. But in their defense, I just had to say something.
I teach a few courses in PlayStation 2. I mean, I'm homeschooling an 8th grader my child, my science. Don't you even see that?
No really. What if Chuck D. Charles Darwin had been a skirt? And what kind of wild theories might she have come up with? No really, that's the name of the book. It's an audio lecture series on misogynist theory, and the New English Journal of Medicine calls it not to be missed.
Cowabong hits. Dude, I thought you were going to say I was completely out of your tiny little mind. Instead, Lauren Breitbart.
Lots of athletes say 6 inches, but long-distance bicyclists actually experience 6 inches, whereas good novelists are more like long-distance runners, good comedians are more like hit-and-run drivers. Next question, if you don't mind.
Drowning here in Summer's cauldron, under mats of flowered larvae.
True to form, new wave cult following band XTC, the band, is currently experiencing a bit of a Steely Dan-like upswing in new fan interest following the release of many new archive recordings on the YouTube and TikTok platforms, and the band is more popular now than ever. As a lifelong XTC enthusiast, spoiler alert, I have taken notice of this phenomena, and this new interest is very understandable to me.
On a recently released YouTube download, a late 70s BBC Sight and Sound video of XTC performing their then-current live set of the era, the groundbreaking UK new wave group might be regarded as a Shazam universe version of those Fab Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the Beatles. Why Shazam? Well, whereas Superman had come from a different celestial sphere, with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal man Shazam, Captain Marvel's powers came from the product of the sum of 7 different ancient Greek gods' superhuman abilities. While XTC always claimed they weren't theorists, the band had many key influences, and said they were initially just trying to put simple ideas together in complicated ways.
For those just finding out about the band, some of us old-timers might have a reverence for XTC that might be described as religious. It seems you either get it or you don't. And there isn't much in between, as with Shazam's secret identity. Teen newsboy Billy Batson, XTC's primitivist origins take it on faith that the DC character uses a magic word to change into his superhero persona, without much question given as to the actual science, or in XTC's case, the actual music theory, involved. And to further contrast the Beatles' Fab Four metaphor, Paul McCartney, the Liverpool mock-top singer, bass and keyboard player, began taking advanced piano songwriting and harmony lessons early on in the group's recording career. Although XTC's secondary guitarist and keyboardist Dave Gregory would begin acting as the group's musical Dr. Frankenstein soon after the BBC Sight and Sound recording was first broadcast.
And around the same time that the former Liverpool Teddy Boys were recording less experimental, more song-oriented, Phil Spector's girl group-influenced, standalone recordings, XTC would jam out on album or in concert at the end of one of their tunes like a Bad Company or a Captain Beefheart, and had obviously learned a lot from their influences, many of whom hadn't existed even 16 or 18 years earlier, when a Fab Four were laying down their first several pivotal recordings. And at the same time, it should be said, the Beatles were influencing some of XTC's key influences. The working-class hero Beatles didn't do much jamming out on their instruments until the group's later albums. You kids, until after Jimi Hendrix and Cream had made such a thing plausible within a rock context. The Byrds, the Jefferson Airplane, the Beach Boys, and other West Coast acts were a bigger influence on the Beatles' later, more experimental recordings, and on the group's guitar solos, too.
To extend the Superman Shazam compare and contrast motif a bit further, and in a weakness that might be called the Beatles' kryptonite to many of the band's non-purists, lots of later era Lennon lyrics border on the incomprehensible and deliberately inscrutable and obscure. This is especially on display in the songwriting on the last 3 or 4 Fab Four albums. These album sets also contain many of the group's greatest songs. To compare, Partridge and Moulding of XTC are more like the Beatles' West End counterparts, the Kinks, in their fame and in their approach.
Like Shazam, the XTC lyrics are more listener and user-friendly than Lennon's lyrics, and are more detail-oriented, and yet are even more cartoonish and literary than McCartney's song lyrics in several cases. XTC lyrics were rarely a bad trip, and read today more like Captain Marvel than Captain Beefheart, and less like Lennon's more James Joyce or Lewis Carroll influenced lyrics.
Okay, so Shazam could never have the international success and worldwide appeal of Superman. Both XTC and Shazam, Captain Marvel, were definitely a maybe you did have to be their classic cult following type band, but that never kept Steely Dan or Fleetwood Mac or Joni Mitchell from gaining a new generation of fans, either. True to form, XTC is currently experiencing a bit of a Steely Dan-like upswing in new fan interest following the release of many new archive recordings on the YouTube and TikTok platforms. Now, about that research grant to write a more complete study of the Swindon, England cult band. Can I just have that in jukebox tokens instead?
Don't let anyone ever tell you who you're going to be for the rest of your life at age 90. Maybe next time though. Okay, Gramps.
Well, at least I had some relations with her. Well, I put her to sleep anyway, potentially. Anyway, / she did name a hairdryer setting after me, lol. And she said we went way back, but it was probably more primordial than rational. In all brute honesty, so I guess that's the way the improv bounces, just hard to ignore. In my yellow trench coat train coat, in my gray fedora and newspaper print hat, though, sweetheart.
What have I dived myself into again this time? Or so I thought, with her using the school of hard knocks as a kind of ring the doorbell and run proposition instead. I guess she had different rules for different fools, and she definitely had different rules for herself than she did for her own biological physics and marine biology. 2. Cupcakes.
Well, they can all be winners, like in Joseph Chaucer's The HBO Hobo's Journal now, can they? If my "I will survive" sounds a little half-heated, it's cause I was thinking of the Glory Half Gainer into the 2 Deep In version of that same old song and dance routine going in. I just knew it was the same old Club Humpty Dumpty remix, all over again.
And the morale to the story goes something like this. Not all life coaches are crazy people, but all crazy people are life coaches. Put that in your vape pipe and smoke it. Go look it up in your Jack and Daniels, and then just try to explain it all to the ex-mass bunny first, kid, and cry on his half-eaten Happy Easter shoulders instead.
Next time, fellow gumshoe detectives, next time.
Can 12 monkeys type Shakespeare? You want it when? We'll just have to do more tongue twisters next time then. Marcellus, well, I don't see a reason why or why not to. We really need more pages.
What? I'm too funny to be an a-hole. But perhaps it is you who is not funny enough to appreciate what it is to be an a-hole.
Yep, he's still an a-hole.
You know, we're taught to think quite differently about the New York Mets than maybe we really should.
You're gonna have to face it. You're addicted to pairs. Try trying that one on for actual size trial size. Court stenographers. Note, trial size packages are only 7 in a pack in the Moonshine State, just enough for the size of a jury in the Florida judicial system. One more reason why many folks don't come round here no more, y'all editors note.
It's libel if they say it, and it's slander if they print it, but of course, most just ignore it anyway, well, as long as they don't have the cajole haze to actually repeat it.
And my other book in the series is called No Really. So-called right-wing, so-called Christian, evangelical theory. People say the darndest things, but then commercial Xmas has always been amateur night in my neck of the woods anyway.
Easy breezy cover band Girl goes on smooth with just a glide of the applicator brush. And it's waterproof, so I just know it's working on my North Atlantic submarine adventures and excursions into the briny deep Poronones.
If you're like me and you're planning on doing some sobbing, or some open mic night emo weeping about Andre Tortes and his very existence at your kid's elementary school and room table conversation or something. I mean, even if you're a Republican and you happen to identify as a woman, you have to draw that yellow line in the snow on that long Loneysville lost highway to nowhere road, somewhere.
And incidentally, Andre Tortes may not know civic liberties, but he does know civil litigation. Nowadays at least though, I was just exchanging tragic markup applicator tips with a stranger on the interwebs. It sounds like the beginning of a working man's fever blister dream. Really? Mojo Lane.
He's like the first guy your mum dates after she divorces your dad. Well, sometimes that moustache chooses you for life. Dennis.
At last count, this Joe Blob monster envisioned episode totals include 6 weird-ass puppets, over 2 freaked-out cartoon caricatures, 9 incidents of General Tsinsu's poop-poop platter foo, reindeer and snowman foo, and 7 incidents of backseat cinematography so far. Anyway, that's the totals at least.
Ham and cheese on rye, that's the style. That will get you many smiles. Plus more than a few unregistered, undermuttered whispers as well.
By now, in the wake of Wednesday week on Netflix, you've no doubt seen the original 60 SDV Addams Family, and you know, looking back, how into it they all seem to be just an almost textbook example of ensemble enthusiasm in the cutthroat episodic TV world.
The cast of the Addams Family could even make the Family Dad and American Guy acting cast somehow seem less than enthusiastic. But John Austen, Caroline Jones, Jackie Cooper, and even Ted Cassidy as Lurch could make a bowl of oatmeal seem somehow more like a Super Bowl in a Las Vegas halftime review show. They just seem to be that amped up about working on the TV series.
Well, some research scientists hit 15 and then just cast a wider net for the same old fishing spots. But I'm not saying that forever 12 is just where you want to be either. I know you are, but what am I? Said the last word. In a pig's eye, in a sow's purse, yours, etc., etc.
My good Sips, did I ever tell you about the dude who speed reads his audiobooks by resetting the volume playback settings to an inaudible 200 or 300% or so, and then actually brags about it? And I know that North Americans now find the need to contextualize everything these days. Quentin T once said that watching a movie on an iPad is like watching a promo through a peephole. But I digress. Speed reading an audiobook like that, it is like spending a weekend in the park at a favorite uncle's house in about 5 minutes or so. You're just not giving credit to the material that way.
But with him, it's like, oh, how was that thirsty first date? There, dude. I have no idea it was all a blur. Well, you know, did she have fun? Did you have a good conversation? Did you get all of her jokes? I have no idea. Life's just too short to get hung up on the details.
Well, my housebound, home brewed, home sliced, hombre amigo. I just read an old Kurt Vonnegut's Jr. book in. You know, the time it takes to read a book like that. About 6 hours, and last month I read all of Jane Austen's War and Prejudice, or was it Pride and Punishment, on audiobook. It took me the entire 37 hours and 14 seconds. But I was doing other things at the same time, too. Bro, that Jane Austen character can sure use peoples, you know. But that's just my opinion. I say, keep Jane Austen weird again.
Dude, I just read the entire works of Neil Sean and Gary Recraft, including the Dragon Ship Stray Route Saga Happenstance 1-7, with the Midnight Mystery at Multidimensional Mudflap Mansion Novelette, Lysander's Epic All Plain Black Wardrobe Multi-Day Day Planner 1-7, and Ebenezer's Crux, the Royal Rusty Razor Shaving Needs Chronicles 1-6, all before midnight tonight. No, I mean yesterday morning before Brexit.
Dude, I have no idea what you're talking about right now, but that's okay because neither do you. Nothing personnel, really. And so round and round that pun usually goes and goes.
House Speaker Mike Johnson believes in more of a 10th century version of the Holy Scriptures. Well, as they say at the Murder King drive-thru, go large or don't go at all.
And one time he killed 600,000 Americans because he didn't file the paperwork on time. It was on his desk in November, and he was throwing paper towels at the problem and suggesting people inject bleach into it. By the next April, and then he had the balls to double down on his subjects by exciting the same Jonestown meets the Kiss-Army space cadets into refusing medical attention, but of course the Russian tyrant Joseph Stalin starved his own people too. So this is nothing really new. The one thing we learn from history is that some people never learn from history. 4 more beers. 4 more beers.
Like an art brute, hee-haw, but with more of a postmodern take, and with more authentic guitar playing.
For every female who makes herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven. Legion 114 in the Gospel of Thomas.
Gentlemen, I couldn't make this up. It seems that all are welcome at the table of the Lord, or is this passage just further proofs that, like anyone can read anything into the Holy Scripture, using modern usage and interpretation to create a variable and yet viable and believable argument in support of or against anything at all? And hey, isn't that Larry Stork in this hee-haw episode?
Well, they can all be Joseph Campbell Chaucer's The Brad and Ticky Tales, can they?
I'm just going to ignore the fact that you can actually hear me now. Captain Genevieve, it's the next step up, really. You see, I'm sort of escalating the science. It's sort of like the hot and cold running sarcasm spigots that I keep underneath the staircase. Smots actually run uphill instead, you see.
And you have yourself a dog day afternoon too. Now Sonny and you too. Sal, But you know, all of that extracurricular banking transaction stuff is really taken care of on our end and online nowadays. We haven't had a decent modern-day armed bank robbery movie at this bank from one of the customers in several years. But can I interest either of you in a teletext toaster machine? How about an abacus or a bank ledger? Well, how about a lollipop? I'll press the alarm if you say you insist though. Ha ha.
The music is just there for the customers. You really don't need to get all Siskel and Haybird about it, Uncle Peepaw.
Oh sure, Jordan Peele is the first African-American director of color to be a huge success working strictly in the horror movie genre in modern Hollywood. But what about that one VHS horror movie franchise from the early 00s, and what about the Tales from the Hood series from the same era? And besides, there were African-American filmmakers working outside of H.E. Double Pickup's world as early as the 1930s Harlem Renaissance.
But that Tyler Swift concert movie is the one black people horror movie that even Jordan Peele's just had to pass on instead. Hey, that doesn't what her fans are hearing in her music, isn't what I was hearing in the Bee Gees or Andy Gibb or Kiss music when I was 11 or 12, and growing up here in the orange groves of Southwest Central, Florida. Just plain old critical pop bliss at that age.
And hey, just maybe she does dance like Elaine from Seinfeld in those Capital One commercials. But that only proves her humanity, that she does have an Achilles heel. And Tyler SMYTH is rumored to be playing the Disco Dazzler in the next Marvel Deadpool movie, a perfect role for Swift, and more proof that you can teach an old genius new tricks.
And the sounds that her music makes are possibly AI too, but they're as wonderfully manipulative as any Steven Spielberg's movie. And again, I was 12 once, and not permanently cynical at one time yet either, so I remember being innocent to the actual mechanics and mechanisms involved in crafting bubblegum pop tunes. So a squirt gun romance with Joni and Collie, and James Taylor-style confessional lyrics married to boy band aesthetics like NSYNC Inc. and Up Direction and the Backstreet Boys is possibly not a bad business school model, and neither is she, small things considered.
When leading an exhibition to the Antarctic, Admiral William Perry brought 12 straitjackets, one for each of his fellow explorers.
And you see, class, mankind will always try to remake God in their own image. Need fries with that, mister.
I think it's just asymptomatic if you get to be my age and you find yourself working out of the house again and watching 20 movies a week again. But the radiance that the 70s really were the Beatles of Hollywood, with the directors giving it their all, instead of the producers and studio bosses telling them what to do with it instead.
I just go down the new Hollywood movies list in the entry on Wikipedia, and not all of these movies are amazing. But from 1964, it's Dr. Strangelove, that first modern movie satire. Kubrick was heavily indebted to Mad Magazine, whether he ever said he was or not. To 1982's The Twilight Zone actor Vic Morrow was killed. One of the directors actually killed one of his stars in an overindulgent display of overindulgent poor judgment.
But this era taught the later directors how to finance, produce, and direct what we routinely see on Netflix, YouTube, and other movie platforms today. Is it really that obvious that I just want Joe Bob Briggs' old Monster Vision movie review job on WTBS, or even his old TerraVision gig on the Movie Channel Presents Doll Here They Live 3D Sunglasses now?
By George, I think she's got it, Mr. Magoo. Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
E! called it the ephemeral eschatology explained and effervescently exculpating the entropy excitedly, etc.
And so, the very next morning, Horatio S. Algiers filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And next time on Anton Chekhov's Long Story Short Theater.
My inner Central City Walgreens persona is basically just be Zen Boomer, an act homicide detective. Well, at Walgreens at least I like to work on my street smarts, otherwise the kid in me would just get a grocery pharmacy museum weekend pass and end up playing sleuthy sociologist guy there for decades at a time. But really, they have been putting up the midterm election ornaments earlier and earlier every year. It's kind of hard not to notice when you're always there.
This is what radio podcast comedy sounds like to people who don't usually listen to radio podcast comedy.
Meanwhile, in Mad Lib's movie franchise episode 6, in which two butch endocrinologists order sushi burgers at the local mortgage investment firm and exculpate about that zesty new Episcopalian fitness clerk at the abandoned Mystery Igloo will not be seen tonight, so that one may bring you the Hungarian semi-itinerate Illuminati word salad in Granny's missile silo with Don Amici and Herschel Gordon-Lewis themselves already in progress. Well, it might just be a little auto-biodegradable too.
Letters.
A Nightmare on Sesame Street. We're fake news. So what? You're artificial intelligence.
Dear editors,
education is neither the lighting of a fire or the filling of a bucket. It is the bucket with the fire already in it seeking a warmer flame. See, you need to have something on fire to make the fire bigger to begin with. Well, anyway, at least that's my philosophy. What? You got a better one? You're hippies. I think they should send you back where you came from. Your smart Alecky High School graduates.
Yours.
The new mystery provost in residence, formerly known as the 1960s French-era New Wave College, Sarasota, Florida.
P.S. Burn, you big baby boom book burners. Burn. But can the students still keep the cybercriminal computer tutorials, cause maybe we're just inspiring a new generation of cybercriminals instead? You know on the offhand that they do graduate, because it seems like everything's so, you know, online nowadays. Anyways, well, back to the old college drawing boards.
Greater than letters.
Dear slurs. Well, it's libel if you print it, and slander if you say it, but it's just indifference if you actually ignore it.
CeeLo Greens and Walmersh put up their election year stuff too early this season. It just gets earlier and earlier every year, while 90% of comedy is just common sense. Really? But I'll wait until they're the middle 60% have been run off sale, just 2 days after the elections. P.S. We totally stand with the NPR and Elm Knot community. Even though it might just take us another 20 years to stop saying, "Oh look, how cute, Asians really are good at mathematics." We do identify, if only just in the Floridas, and if only just for political purposes, so far. Yep, but our therapist says she thinks we should see other people.
Editor's reply.
Wow, Sissy, it sure sounds like you sure just got the cow for free in that bargain.
Dear fools.
I'm not gonna lie to you or deliberately misrepresent myself. Flipper. But in the 9th grade I drew a swastika on my tan school corduroy dungarees. Screeching weasel. I said it was because I was bored. Sick of it all. A kid from the school newspaper wanted to interview me for his story about this punk phenomena, the Vandals. I told him I wasn't a punk, but that I didn't know what I was. No idea.
After that, I just couldn't stay away from my interest in the alternative press. Mr. T experience. I'm not going to tell you exactly where I thought this was leading, Iggy and the Stooges. But needless to say, about a year after that, Rem soon came along, No FX, and the Replacements and Husker Du came along about a year after that, Social Distortion. And they gave us all kinds of content and context. The Offspring.
I have loved The Clash, The Queers, and some of the other bands I had read about in Cream magazine. Pennywise. But I knew I could never be in The Clash in the first place. Fat Records. And the iconic photos on the album covers and press photos of these newer bands just further sealed the deal. They looked just like us. All. From then on and forever we were indie kids playing punk rock music. Millen Collin.
Content is important, but context matters just as much as context, if not more so. Lagwagon. Content is being in the 9th grade and making jokes about wearing the Texaco Star of David, Bad Religion. But context is seeing film of an actual Jewish Holocaust on a TV newsreel, anti-flag, or much worse, actually knowing someone who is connected to all this, Epitaph.
Yours. Just an old maximum rock and roll enthusiast.
P.S. And with a name like My Struggle, it sure sounds like Meatball Ron had a Trump Rhino Republican evangelical theory ghostwriter type that one up for him, too. True believers.
Letters.
Dear worms.
This so-called right-wing evangelical theory exists only between their ears, an utter fabrication based on one passage. As opposed to all those passages warning them of the dangers of divorce, and that the theory didn't really exist, it would be giving me the golly gee willikers. I just don't think it's a very positive message to send to some of the locals, whose belief system might only be off by 50 or so years instead.
Fodder Flanagan, the John Bleach Society, lost in the fashionable 1950s. Well, better too late than never yours, etc., etc.
P.S. sHAZZBOT and the ISIS and Hamas all got started as a prank phone call from the CIA that just got way out of hand. Do you think I'm on the internet too much? P.S. I'm having a Bonnie and Clyde themed birthday party for my 7-year-old. She says they were the first TikTok superstars. Be under it. And does anybody have Warren Beatty's cell number? Well, hey, it worked in rehearsal.
Letters.
Dear sirs and madmans.
Held back only by his own ignorance, the feral, malevolent, malignant, pagan Jesus, false messiah with the brains of a Big Mac and the soul of an empty wallet. Yawn, cowardly enough for anti-US government work. Well, maybe I can come back as a White House press secretary, he pondered. Wouldn't that at least be a laugh riot? I don't know, but sometimes I wonder. Yours, the Sinclair Lewis Babbitt routine, the paperback shack, the abandoned plaza next to that third-choice airport, the Disney Topi a future furniture palace again.
Wait, no prefabricated, Americanized version of Jesus jokes in this one. Well, so how about some preteen, babysitter-friendly, Christian-curious, pseudo-proto-arena rock musings instead?
Letters.
Hi, it's God here again, equal. It used to be, is it a cartoon, a kid's toy, or a breakfast cereal? But nowadays, is it a movie franchise, a video game, or an amusement park ride? And weren't things just plenty crazy enough when it was? What did I create? Is it an animal, a vegetable, or a mineral? And sex and drugs and rock and roll used to be just gimme that wine, woman and song stuff, your majesty, but that shite is extra credit, too.
In my housing project, you're basically a Trump reptilian rallier in name only, unless you believe that the terrorism in the Middle East is of course a sign from your own personal pan-pizza version of the Messiah. The thinking is maybe he can finally do something about bringing down these gas prices again, myopic to a fault, no doubt, but that's been the brainwashed attitude of these infidels all along, and of their sons and daughters really, in one misplaced capacity or after another.
I picture Trump's poster boy Vlad Putin on the phone to Modry Legoland, dictating let's really wang it up this next time. Old sort, while most of my stuck in the state where the sun always shines neighbors, the orange Julius Caligula's older voters who just happen to be of a certain age, just putzing around in life's forgotten gas-guzzling two-car garage, in their goofy golf cart dress codes, under-muttering to themselves. I can tell that it's complicated just by looking at you, Don Don.
While their Third Wives Club's auxiliary members just hide behind their decorative floral pattern swastika aprons, daydreaming of simpler minds, and trying to remind themselves, well, the good Lord does good things through evil people sometimes, and asking the other dimwits, does it need more scotch in the butterscotch, their babe?
If you've ever read the entire Old Testament cover to cover in its original Aramaic, well, I know I haven't, but it does say at the bottom in the comments section, thou shalt not kill, so from the outside looking in this tract of land in the Middle East, with its 6 million souls and only about as big as Pinellas County here in the Floridas, well, as far as the geography goes anyway, well, this is God talking here. It's probably not a conflict worth ending the whole world over all over again, or is it?
Of course the culture and the people do need to endure. At least, so the British Museum has something to steal for the next big tourist season, nothing personnel. Just my opinion, really, but the new standard wisdom has it that this conflict is kind of like what you'd find if you built a Burger King on top of a McDonald's on top of a Wendy's. My people do tend to stick to their brand loyalties, and usually to a fault.
But I digress. Despite some seriously misguided US voting and polling, people poll their anger, but they vote their conscience, thank me later. Stuck here in the state where the sun always shines, wanting to live free or die is often spoken of as a capital offense, but only in hushed drunken tonics. At least that's not the actual typical reality estate in my neck of the neighborhood. Here they mostly talk really, so far in front of me, and in front of the eyes of the world, well, gotta go, the grass awaits, this turf builder too isn't going to water itself, I get off on my lawn. You kids, I get off on my lawn.
With best regards towards a speedy recovery.
Sincerely, George Burns, as you know who. The farce is strong with this one. Everywhere in Florida, the US of A.
The zombies win the pennant. The zombies have won the American League pennant.
Letters.
Dear Squidwards.
But that's what's supposed to happen to people like Dark Forest Trump. They were never supposed to be the president, they were supposed to go directly to jail like Bernie Madoff or Richard Epstein. Or at least be one cancelled serial killer without a conscience. Like a Harvey Weinstein's, going to jail is what was supposed to happen to him, after another one of the Grumpers' doomed real estate deals fell through. But before he ever even became elected as the ex-US president, he was supposed to just hide out in his swampy, rundown, fake-class, underwater gambling casino in Majory Lego's land, at least until 60 Minutes and the federal authorities pulled up in one of the squad cars and hauled him away in chains with a grateful public chanting, "Throw away the keys," just like that. And that's the name of that tune. Don't the editors of this here magazine even see that?
Signed, Skeeter Skeeter Jr. the Third, in the Sandman's Dreaming, the Deep South.
Dear Skeeter Skeeter Jr. the Third.
Well, you're feeling gregarious tonight. I'm feeling his sister, egregious and Andrew Dice Kaufman WK has his drop the hot open mic night moment after all, albeit seriously though. Skeet skeet, do you think you're on the internet too much?
And stay tuned for Bermuda Boat Love Triangle Island on most of these IRS-audited network affiliate stations.
Dear Spineless Curs.
This anti-abolition legislation that keeps college women from going to college, and about as volatile and as short-fused as the hand grenade maiden's tail. Well, maybe it's meant to keep the gals from having a voice of their own. And how is that different from what the ISIS or Shazam or the Taliban has been doing with its own legislation? I mean privately. Plus, don't you sometimes think that all these clandestine organizations just got started from a CIA prank phone call that just got terribly out of hand? Or do you think I'm on the internet too much? Yup, they've really defunded the social service programs with this one, me more. Greater than. Good luck with that. Meanwhile, does anyone know where I can get a black market baby? You know, for pots. Jonathan Tyler Swift. Down the Chip Shop. The Norton Anthology of English Literature. P.S. Does the chimney lung count as a pre-existing condition? Kids today.
Letters.
Dear Chatbots.
The saddest story in the world. until the next election cycle ends anyways, was when my sister was 10 or 11 and this MR girl and her family moved in next door. And the MR
girl was about 16. Well, that summer the MR girl wanted to play Barbies, and my sister was like, sure, let's play Barbies. The next summer my sister was about 12, and she's like, yeah, sure, okay, let's play Barbies.
Well, the next summer after that, this kid is 17 and still MR. And I think you know where I'm going with this. And the kids still all like, come on, let's play Barbies. But my sister doesn't want to play Barbies with the kid anymore. She's into rock music or something else back in those days. That's life, though.
And that's the saddest story in the world. Until next summer anyway. What happened the next summer? That's pure M. Night Shyamalan stuff. Dude, yeah, we get all that. But which one of us is the MR girl in this movie again?
Just a human fly on the wall. Signed, Voltron J. Skeletor, The Burbs, Anytown, USA.
Well, if you can understand what you're saying here, Bubba, then we're just glad you're not just renting out your cerebral cortex for a hat rack either. Voltron, who among us isn't that MR girl in some capacity or another? Whoa, empathy. Lock up your gerbils.
Letters.
Dear huddled masses yearning to clear the air and at least breath a little freer anyways.
Hey, did you ladies hear that one about women will have to become men in order to enter the kingdom of heaven? It's in the book of Thomas. Plain as day, I looked it up. I mean, me. I'm convinced that anyone can read anything into or out of the book of books at any time. And it doesn't bother me in the least. A person will always find the need to remake God in his or her own image. It is a book of faith, not science. After all, an Ozembic of the people. Geez, that's an understatement. Well, I just wanted to share the good news. It turns out that everyone is welcome at the table of the Lord. Pretty even-handed, don't you think? Hi, Mom. I'm on TV.
Mike's Johnson, somewhere just in time. The State of the Union in Dressed, US of A. Although you shouldn't always just listen to your Mr. Johnson.
P.S. And nope, I looked it up. Thomas Jefferson's wasn't just another Nostradamus type. Either his politics were more than just a product of his era, but he was always looking 5 years down the road anyway to us living in the modern age. And looking back, it just becomes the choice either to choose presentism or not, to either accept it all or reject it all, or better still to be kind of a third base umpire and just call 'em as you see 'em. Holds up the clap applause and agree laughter sign. And there goes yet just another quote designed for you to just agree with. But that's just how cyclical I've become.
Repent, repent, Harley Quinns, said the TikTok men. The only thing you have left to lose is your martinis. Do I not breed? Even a chicken can have children. These are the chokes, folks.
Letters.
Dear infidels,
The massacres in the Middle East are what happens when religious fanaticism meets rocket launchers, and it could never happen here. But in countless NRA might as well have been approved mass shootings, it kind of already has. When someone's religion teaches them that their neighbor is a bug, sooner or later they're going to want to squash what they see as a bug just to see what that might look like, then slash. It's sickening, and it's deplorable. So, what's a preventive medicine? Well, the problem itself probably isn't going to be solved in some cyber grunge, Swamp Gator, AI Hee-Haw knockoff radio podcast, but FDR never got the chance to bring the European-style socialism he helped to create in Eastern Europe back to its full employment in the US. Surprisingly enough, though. So I don't know, how about a massive infrastructure program that would also get different ethnic types working side by side towards a common goal of fixing the roads and bridges? I know, and then what? Just so more Australian billionaires and Jewish space lasers can take our jobs and cancel Christmas right in front of us. Nothing ever changes around here. Guys and dolls, not even the obvious answers.
Pete Body Check, the Ministry of Transportation, on vacation in Dunedin, FL.
Reply.
Mr. Mays at TV Production Tech School wasn't a bad Randy Scousket. He was just a little disillusioned is all. We're not doing Saturday Night Lives Matters here. Indeed, I should have left right then and there. I'm sorry, was that out loud?
Letters.
He's got the whole universe eating out of his hands, right? Well, unfortunately for all of you alls, after much research and much actually reading the thing, it turns out the Brian of Nazareth of the New Scriptures was actually more into boys. Y'all, he was a 5'1", brown or black Jewish hippie. Probably bisexual and possibly dying of malnutrition. Anyway, I picture Black Richard Dreyfuss in his Academy Award winning The Goodbye Girl 70s movie era. Plus 33 is just amazingly old in those early days of antiquity. And here's the clunker, he would probably just cringe if he ever heard all those turgid love songs that you've been singing at him in the last couple of years. He was probably more into Feli and Nicolou Pakuti and the Africa 70. Or the Parliament Funkadelics, really, based on the habits of the people of that region of the world at that time, and everything. Love always, Donna Brazil, another demographic Democrat who seems to be getting younger instead. Aging in reverse, the hill, y'all. P.S. I know, right? A brown or black Richard Dreyfuss during the Goodbye Girl years. I can see that image now myself.
When leading an expedition to the Antarctic, Admiral William Perry brought 12 straight jackets with him, one for each of his fellow explorers.
If you've made it to the end of this cartoon radio show, then you deserve to give yourself a huge round of applause. And maybe some cookies and beer to be keeping up with the jokesters next door. Now go watch some cognitive psychology true crime files cooking programs, or someone else's family, based in TV reality game show host bloopers, real or imagined. Or another You've Earned It. True believers, thanks for your ears. And remember, feedback is always welcome.
Meanwhile, 2 million people are frantically searching for running water in the Gaza Strip. Peace out.
Copyrights 2024.
No CGI was harmed in the making of this comedy radio podcast episode. Notes: Objection, your Enron. Performative. The protagonist is leading the antagonist on with a bunch of unrelated stage combat cues and off-point, off-the-cuff, off-the-fourth wall interaction techniques. Call your mother tonight if you can.